Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, we're going to talk about Alpha Balance PTS 2.0. They've updated again, although this time we're not dealing with weaponry, we're dealing with heat sinks and what they do. Going at the problem from another direction, which is always good for the testing. But let us get into the details here. Alterations to the heat system, seeing reduced shutdown threshold and increased dissipation. So we will be capping maximum heat before shutdown at 40 points. This number cannot be further augmented by further heatsink investments, but to counteract that loss of ability to increase your capacity, dissipation rates on standard and double heatsinks will improve. So let's go through the details of that. Dissipation rates for standard heatsinks would raise from 0.13 to 0.14, which is basically just shy of where the current double heatsink value is. Of course, they no longer increase your shutdown threshold. And double heatsinks, external dissipation is going from 0.15 to 0.2, while the internal engine dissipation remains at 2, which is awesome because these are now true dubs. People have been asking that for a while. Why don't we just add true double heatsinks into the game and reduce capacity? This is essentially the PTS for you if you were in that camp. It's also very important to note, if you don't know this already, external and internal heatsinks are different. So internal heatsinks are the ones that come with your engine, and external heatsinks are the ones that you drag from equipment and then put onto your mech. Anytime you add a heatsink manually, it's external. Double heatsinks already, the internal versions were the full 0.2, while the external were 0.15. Why this is important is because this change is only going to affect mechs that actually added additional heatsinks beyond the engine. So if you had say an inner sphere medium or inner sphere light or something along those lines that would just take a light 250, and that would be all they would take, no additional heatsinks, and they would run off that dissipation, this change doesn't affect that mech. This only affects you if you would take your engine 250 rating or above and then add additional heatsinks to it. But, well, not just the 250 rating, any rating of engine. If you added external heatsinks, you would have a cooling increase. So what this also does for mechs that have, say, a low engine rating, like the urban mech and things like that, you're actually getting a heat dissipation increase because you're not being held back by the fact that you don't have as many internals compared to larger mechs, which is where their entire reason why those particular low max engine rating mechs have a heat dissipation quirk. But we're going far too much on a tangent talking about one little thing. That's the backstory of why that's important and what we're going to talk about there. Also, they did some mobility changes for a lot of mechs. A fair amount of inner sphere mechs, but also some clan mechs that were a little bit low mobility. So that's great. We can take a look at some of those details here in PDFs. They have them for the inner sphere and the clan. We'll pop over to the inner sphere one first, and we will scroll all the way down to the bottom. We'll stop here just for a moment. You can see stuff where, like, some mechs are just getting really minor buffs, like the CN9-A. It's getting 9 to its torso speed. Yeah, that's nice, but it's just a minor buff. But where it gets really ridiculous is actually some of the assault mechs, where it's going to be awesome. Let us find, if I can, the Atlas, because I did some testing in the Atlas DDC. I'll throw up some of that footage right now in the backfield as you guys watch this. They have given the Atlas massive mobility increases, and actually several inner sphere assaults and such. For example, the acceleration went from 8.5 to 15.4, a 6.9 increase, which is like, what? Like over 60-70% increase? Something along those lines. I'd have to do the math on it. That's incredible amount of acceleration. Also, its torso speed, so the amount that it can, the rate at which it can torso twist, went from 58.5 to 81. I actually found, when I was doing my testing in that particular atlas, and you're probably seeing it on screen now, I could actually twist. I could spread damage. My mech felt responsive. It was amazing. I even went as far as to fully spec the mobility tree for an atlas to see how that changed it. And dare I say, it made the atlas feel snappy? What? Oh, that doesn't compute. Where in this world is an atlas snappy? Well, on the PTS, it seems. So yeah, a lot of the changes are increasing the mobility for those mechs that were really left behind with the engine desync. Things like the Atlas that were basically unable to brawl anymore because they couldn't spread damage to their arms and such to get off of their wonderful side torsos that carried all their weapons. I am fully for those mobility changes, and even if everything else fails in the public test, give us these mobility changes. Oh my god, I love them. But, moving on, we're going to come back to the spreadsheet warrior here, as there is change in the rate at which double heat sinks cool you off, which is great. We're not going to really talk about single heat sinks, because who uses those? I mean, in the past, there was a argument when they were at 0.13 that the double heatsink at 0.15, yeah, if you're an assault mech, you've got a lot of extra weight, and you're using mainly energy weapons, you've got like a bunch of extra space, you know, mechs like the Stalker or the Supernova, sure, put a standard engine on there, fill it with single heatsinks, enjoy yourself sort of thing. It works. However, double heatsinks have been increased by 33%, which is a hell of a lot of an increase. So, single heatsinks are not so useful anymore, comparatively. But let's look through the change at which you're going to get if you have more heatsinks. So you have the heatsink count over here. This goes up to an arbitrarily high 40 because you can't really fit that many heatsinks on a mech. You just run out of slots. On live, your first 10 are double heatsinks with a true dub, so you get 2 heat per second because it's 0.2 each, and there's 10 of them. Then past that, you're going to gain 0.15, and so we're just continuing to add this up. This is live. On PTS, it's much simpler. It's just 0.2 per heatsink, so we're going up slightly faster. And we can see the change here. So essentially, every single heatsink is getting an additional 0.05 heat dissipation per second. Going into that with the base heat, which is now stuck at 40, our heat containment skill can boost that cap up to a total of 46 if you get all 5 nodes, because each heat containment node gives us 3%. So we get a total of 46. But we also have some heat gen. With clans, we can get up to 8.4% heat generation, lowering the heat that our weapons create. And with Inner Sphere, we can get 10.5%. So if we have, say, 40 heat, which realistically should shut us down if we didn't do anything else. If we didn't get any skills, a 40 heat Alpha Strike will shut us down. However, we can boost our cap to 46, and if we get full heat gen nodes, we can take that 40 down to 36 or 35. Wow, we can actually start to push a little bit further here. you can actually fire off about 50 heat with full skills. So you have all of the heat gen and all of the capacity, because it lowers it down to 45.8 and 44.8, which is below our boosted cap of 46. That is assuming you have your entire cap to play with, because you may be on a hot map, you may be moving, and you may be already using up, say, 7-8% of your heat capacity doing those actions. So more likely it's going to be, if you have all of these things, around 48 heat, maybe 47, to be safe, be able to alpha strike while running on Tourmaline Desert, for example. And to go along with this, Tarogato has actually done a nice sheet, although it's a little low resolution here. I should have gotten a better version of it. But just various energy weapon combinations on the Clan Inherisphere side, with max heat, with skills and no skills, so you can see where that cutoff is, where the normal cutoff of 40 is, and if you do get the max skills, now you can still shoot things like 2 large pulse lasers, 6 medium pulse lasers together, and stay active. And of course, assuming you have the capacity, you're not running your mech on a hot map. And you can still do fairly good damage. That's 66 damage for that particular pulse laser combo. But let us get out of the spreadsheets and head into the game here and take a look at some of those examples. I'm going to go into select mech, and do I have my... I don't. Why did I not favorite that to get it ready? Because I wanted to show it off. It is my Novacat, which has a similar pulse design to the one we just described. If I find it here quickly... Oh my god. Favorite it up. There we go. So, for example, this Novacat Prime Special variant has 2 large pulse lasers and 5 medium pulse lasers, a bunch of heat sinks, as a total of 26 doubles, which will mean that we have... Let's go back to the spreadsheet warrior really quickly here. There we go. 26. We'll have an additional 0.8 per second of heat dissipation on this thing, which is ridiculous. It's several heat sinks worth of dissipation. To get this dissipation on the PTS, we would have to get 31 or 32 on the live servers, which is crazy. But if we pop into the testing grounds, into Tourmaline Desert, which is the one I use for testing all of my mechs because it's hot, so you get to see how they perform there. And also there's an Atlas right where you spawn, so you can immediately start beating up a fairly tanky target. But if we start moving forward and shooting at the Atlas, we can find 7% while moving, fire off everything, just barely doesn't shut down as we get to like 91, 92%. We do have to wait the entire duration for our heat to come down. My weapons are recycled now, but if I fired before I fully cooled off, I would overheat. Which is there's several things I want to talk about. We'll start with that since it's showing itself off right now. This change, I feel, is going to be primarily focused on large alpha strikes of mostly energy weapons, as great big heavy large laser designs with, say, 2 heavy large, 4 or 5 ER mediums, that kind of thing. The standard design you get on like a Hellbringer is not going to be useful anymore. You're generating too much heat. Even if you get max skills, you're going to shut down, which kind of sucks. Those particular designs are basically non-viable anymore. However, what it's going to do is, with the increased dissipation, you're going to have less time between heat-efficient alphas. So where before you had a bunch of capacity and less dissipation. You would be able to fire a huge alpha of heavy lasers, for example, or you could fire, say, 2 alphas very quickly in a row with the high capacity. You could absorb that heat, and then after you've fired 2 alphas really quickly, as you see here, this mech can't even fire this alpha anymore without overheating. I wonder if I could do it when I'm standing still. Alright, I'm going to catch my mind there because I started talking about something else. Because of the capacity, you could fire multiple alphas or a very big alpha all at once without worrying about overheating, and then you would spend longer in cover recuperating from that heat because you had weaker heat sinks. It would take longer to dissipate that total amount of heat. Where here, because the capacity is lower, you can't fire the big alpha, or you can't fire repeated alphas. Typically, you're just going to get like 1 and you're done. You have to go back and dissipate. But that dissipation is going to be faster. So you stepping back out to shoot again is going to happen earlier. Overall, DPS should increase for most mechs, as they're going to be able to cool down faster, which is typically the thing that limits mechs in terms of their amount of fire that they can put down range. Sometimes it's DPS, but more than likely you're limited by heat for the total amount of damage you can do over a given time frame. So heat efficient DPS is going up, but your alpha strikes are getting a little smaller. So the poke meta, stick out and poke, is going to get smaller but more frequent. The brawl meta of being able to sustain yourself with SRMs and such like that is actually going to get improved. I should, in the background here, have some footage of me in my powerhouse. Keep in mind that this design for my powerhouse is a CERM AC20, but also that it doesn't have very many external heatsinks that would benefit from this change. It only has a couple, I believe, 2 or 3. So it's getting a small benefit from the change, but not crazy amount. I could probably change the build around, focus more on heatsinks if I really wanted to get it fully set up to maximize its benefit. But overall, if you have a bunch of heatsinks and you're a brawling mech, yeah, you're actually going to be a better brawling mech because you can stay on target longer and have a higher DPS against them. So that's how it's going to change the different metas. But it also exasperates some issues that occur between clan and IS technologies. And if we come back here to the mech bay, we can see I have both the Inner Sphere Orion Hero and the Clan Orion Hero, and I've outfitted them extremely similarly. So the Inner Sphere one has triple ER large lasers and a Gauss rifle. The Clan one has 2 ER large lasers, 2 ER mediums, and a Gauss rifle. Because the Clan is Clan, it has 2 slot double heatsinks. It has more effective and smaller ferro armor and endo steel. It has Clan XL engines, which give it even more weight savings, considering the Inner Sphere version has to use a light to have the same durability. But their quirks aren't that different. I'm mainly looking at durability here. I've got plus 27 armor in the CT for the Orion 2C hero, where I've got plus 39 in the CT for the Protector Inner Sphere. You know, it's stronger for the Inner Sphere variant. It's more tanky, but it's only I don't know, what is that, 12 points or whatever? It's less than an Alpha Strike for most mechs. So it can only stand out and really get sort of a couple more seconds of concentrated fire before it gets taken out. However, because of those other changes due to clan technologies, the Inner Sphere version only has a single external double heatsink, while the clan version has, what is this, 12 additional? 12 additional double heatsinks. So the clan version is getting 12 times the benefit for cooling compared to the Inner Sphere version because it can take more heatsinks with the heatsink buff. Relatively, between Inner Sphere and clan, they're staying the same. Yeah, it's an increase from 0.15 to 0.2 for both. It seems fair. However, when one group can take 1 and the other group can take 12, for example, on similar styled builds, then one group gets 12 times the benefit from that increase because they have more of it. And just, that's something that's going to occur no matter what, unless we equalize technologies and give some of the benefits that clan have, like the XL engine stuff, to the Inner Sphere. But that's never going to happen because that's changing lore. So, I don't know. It's just an unintended consequence of what this change will do. It will buff specific clan mechs more than their Inner Sphere counterparts. Like, if I take this off favorites here and I go to mediums for both of them, there'll be stuff like my Bushwhackers. They're great brawlers, but it only has one additional external heatsink, where something that is the exact same weight in the clan side, or even less weight in the clan side, like, say, the Huntsman Paquette, another great brawler that I love, it has 6 external heatsinks that it's benefiting from. Just another example. Every single clan mech of a particular weight compared against the same weight for Inner Sphere is going to be better improved by the heatsink change. Also, okay, I gotta start wrapping this up. This is a super long video. We go back to my favorites here. There are particular builds that can still get through this change. So, for example, the Mad Cat Mark II, where we have a pair of Heavy Large, a pair of ER Mediums, and a pair of Gauss. You know, this is like meta as it comes, right? This is what people are complaining about. It's not the 92 point alpha or whatever that was the boogeyman that they were working on. That mech already, even with the high heat cap, was pretty unsustainable because the dissipation wasn't there to take care of it. But with this mech, yeah, you can almost fire it all. Keep in mind, I was moving on a hot map. If I stand still, I should be able to fire this entirely without overheating. Only at 3% here. Fire. Boom. Yeah, I can fire it all without overheating. So on a hot map, when you're running, sure, you're going to overheat. But if you're on a cold map, you're not going to overheat on this mech. I can just stop up for a second, and I can do my pair of Heavy Larges, pair of ER Mediums, chase it up with a Gauss right afterwards. So that's easily done. If you get full skills on this, which I'm not sure if I have on this particular mech, but let us pop over to the Death Strike for a moment, which I do have full skills on for heat capacity and heat generation. And we pop into Testing Grounds, and let us go to, say, Frozen City. Show off a cold map with this particular thing. This is still possible to do 2 Heavy Larges, 3 ER Mediums, and a pair of Gauss, if I'm not mistaken. On paper, it doesn't look like it works right. doesn't seem like it should work because it generates just slightly more heat than should be possible. However, in practice, your lasers don't give all of their heat instantaneously. If I fire just to the side of this commando, you can see that my heat generates over a duration as the lasers fire. You're actually dissipating heat during that time. With the increased dissipation, this effect is also increased. So it's a tiny bit more. I could calculate it, but that's far too much work. But it just means that, yes, when you have 0 on a cold map like this, you can do 2 heavy larges and 3 ER mediums and a pair of Gauss and still not hit your heat capacity. So we can do that here in a second, as we're down to just 1% while moving, and we can just dunk this cicada and not overheat. So we've removed a laser from this design, the 4 ER medium, 2 heavy large design. Excellent. We've removed a medium laser from it. Now this is basically right on the edge. It needs to be on a cold map or standing still on a hot map, so keep that in mind. However, it's still possible. But we need to wrap up our thoughts here. In the end, I'm okay with this change. I mean, we're increasing the dissipation and we're reducing the cap. So all you have to do is just pay more attention to your heat at any one time because it's easier to overheat. But realistically, you can still do some pretty strong alpha strikes. You can do 2 heavy larges and 3 ER mediums if you set your mech up correctly. So a fair amount of Hellbringer builds will just be able to drop a laser or 2 and still function the same way. You get more heat sinks, you get more dissipation because you're dropping that laser. You're going to be firing more often, but just a little less of total quantity per firing. But overall, your DPS will go up. It's difficult for me to say exactly how that's all going to change the meta. It could occur that it dramatically changes it, and it's less pokey, less long-range poke fire combat, and more shorter range, mid-range, DPS type combat. And that would be great. But I need more than 4v4s in order to determine that, which is hard on the PTS because there's not enough people to do 12v12s. Oh well. But one last thing is there are some people out there that are saying, well, with this change with a reduced cap, we can actually get rid of heat scale. And I say to that, yeah, no, you can't get rid of it. You can revisit some of the weaponry, but you can't get rid of it. Because things like the Derp Whale that would have 2 peeps, 2 Gauss, if you reverted that change where those are heat scale linked, this comes back because that's only, 32 heat? It's possible, again, with 40 heat cap. I don't even want 2 peep Gauss or 2 Gauss peep to return because those night gears and stuff are annoying as shit to play against. Where they just pop up and you go, oh, there's a night gear on the horizon, let me shoot at it with my lasers. And your lasers are being capped with the 40 maximum, so you can't really shoot that much at any one time. And he just dunks 45 damage into you and then falls back into cover instantaneously. And you go, I had no opportunity to respond. That was fun. With \S afterwards, in case you can't tell the sarcasm. That particular heat scale, no, I don't want it back in the game. I like those not being there. It makes me happy when I don't get dunked by PPC Gauss from across the map. There's no way for me to effectively counter that by being a proactive, smart player. The increase of mobility promotes me being a proactive, smart player because I can torso twist like crazy. But you could revisit it for a lot of the energy weapons. you're effectively heat capped anyway, so ER mediums, yeah, you don't really need a limit on them anymore, because you can't really fire more than 6 anymore, which was what their limit was. So, sure, remove the heat cap, because, or even just leave it. It's not going to matter anything. If a person fires 7, they're going to overheat anyway, even without it. So if they generate extra heat when firing 7, who cares? Because they're already shutting down. So those don't really matter anymore. They're sort of obsoleted. Like the ready button, a vestigial organ of this game. But yeah, I think this PTS was pretty cool. I can handle the reduced heat cap. It is essentially doing kind of the same thing that the energy draw system was going to do, where energy draw was trying to push people to the cap faster. This is bringing the cap down to them so they reach it faster. It's just taking the equation from the other way around. But that is my thoughts on the PTS. It was rambly and long, but it was a big change that I need to cover a lot of stuff on. As always, make sure you go to the forums and give your input there, as that is where they'll primarily be gathering their information. And, as always, thanks for watching, and good hunting.